able to get the photo and you don't have to worry about missing it, right? And then finally, in terms of wrapping it all into social and communications and multimedia and everything, find something that you're passionate about and turn it into a project, because nothing gets you through a day and through life more than being passionate about what you do. And that's the one thing about what I do. I wake up every day wanting to do it because I really enjoy it,
Yep.
And
I agree.
I learned that from a lot from AARP's Life Reimagine platform when I was working with them, and 3 people in particular, well, a whole bunch, but that whole Life Reimagine platform, Emilio Pardo, who is the VP of branding, and the president of Life Reimagine, and then Richard Leiter, who is an author in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, that wrote a book called The Power of Purpose, and talks a lot about purpose and passion. And finally, a professor named Dr. Christine Whalen from the University of Madison, Wisconsin, who's also big on happiness in life and purpose and things like that. And many students who take her class say it was the best class they've ever had in their life, and they're thankful that they've taken it because it's called Consuming Happiness. And they learn all about purpose and passion and many other things. So you know what? It may sound, when you first latch on to these things about purpose and passion, a little hokey and kumbaya-ish and all that stuff that people say, new age-ish and this and that. Right. But there's never a substitute for purpose and passion in life.
I totally agree with you. And I want to thank you for coming on. And like I said, we're going to put it into the audio form and get it onto the podcast. But I know you had some schedule conflicts, so you couldn't get on 7, which is our usual time. But I greatly appreciate you joining me here in this platform so that I can get the interview with you and we can do it. And I'm hoping that, as like I said, that things get better and we are able to travel, that I can travel to New York and actually meet you and Sri in person. I've got a whole list of people that I need to meet in person, you and Sri being on that list of the New Yorkers, and definitely Neil in DC and some others, Paula down in Florida. So I got a whole list of places I need to get up and about to see the barber first, then get around to traveling to see some of my new friends and friends that I have met virtually but have not met in person.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. No, absolutely. So, I look forward to our friendship evolving and our connection evolving and everything else, learning more about each other. And I think what you're doing is great work. And now is your show actually mainly audio, or is it also video as well?
Right now, it's mainly audio. One of the things of taking Tim's class is to make it have a video aspect and everything. Okay. So right now, it's pretty much all audio, and that's the way we've been doing it for the 5.
I'm glad to hear that, though. You know why? Let me say this about that. This is the first year coming up when the Pulitzers are awarded in a few weeks because they were delayed because of this whole COVID crisis. Right. But when the Pulitzers are awarded, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but this is the first year they're offering a Pulitzer. They're giving away a Pulitzer, not offering. They're giving away a Pulitzer for audio reporting.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. So you better go on their website when you get off here. Go onto the Pulitzer website and check it out, because this is going to be the first Pulitzer awarded in audio reporting.
Okay, cool.
So I think that's really important, because my point with this is that what you're doing is still very important. There doesn't always have to be video. There's a lot to be said for talk shows and podcasts that don't have somebody's face, but you're really just listening to them and not just looking at them as well.
Exactly. I agree.
A whole nother beast, and a very valuable part of what communication and reporting is about too. So I think that there's a standard to it that needs to be maintained, and I hope it always lives, Yeah,
I agree with you on that. And that's one of the things that we're doing, is that we'll always have the audio version. And actually, one of the things I told Tim is that what I'm thinking about using the StreamYard for is more like these kind of opportunities where there are people. We like to think of ourselves, even though I'm here in North Carolina, Dean is in New Jersey, we still like to think of ourselves as being very much of a global market in terms of our audience and also in terms of our guests. And it was easier to interview Ron earlier today because he's in Dubai, which is a whole different time zone. I've got Andrea, who I met. It might have been through Street as well, but she's in London. So, of course, her time zone is different than mine. Right. And then there was I've actually got one of your people, Renita, and I've been going back and forth on email with her, and she's in India. So it makes it easier for me to do these interviews at the convenience of them as opposed to the convenience of my time zone that we have our show on and everything. So it's opening up a greater network of both listeners and a greater network of guests because I'm able to work around their schedule using StreamYard. So I'm thinking about using StreamYard more for the interviews and also having them on Facebook at the same time like this is, and Zoom because, like I said, Ron was a Zoom interview, and also I know that platform as well from doing different things. And I was curious to see how they worked, and they both worked about the same. I think that the picture was a little bit more on Zoom, so I got to see more of Ron's face than I've seen of yours, but it was very similar. It was a thumbnail picture, but his picture might have been a little bit greater and everything. And then the other thing I was telling Tim is I'm going to use it as a form of marketing. So you talk about digital marketing. It's like I might come on and do a quick 2-minute or 3-minute audio about what the podcast will be about, and then direct people to the podcast and listening to it on audio. But it might be me doing a quick pitch online. I know you've done that even with some of yours things.
Yeah. I think using online live streaming for letting people know about your upcoming broadcasts and shows are very important. You know, the other thing, do you do the shows you do, each guest is pretty much interviewed one at a time, or do you do group discussions?
It becomes a group discussion. We started when the show first started. It was started with a mutual friend of me and Dean's, and she actually was the brainchild of it. At the time, it was the Voice of the People with Ty Jones, and that was her name. But she got married, moved away from us, and me and Dean were enjoying doing it so much that we kept it going. And she has since come back and has her own podcast. Wow. She's a breast cancer survivor now, so hers focuses more around some of those things. But we've kept ours going ever since for the last 5 years. So when we first started doing it as the two of us, it might have been 1, maybe 2 guests at the max. But then I would invite 2 or 3 people on. And that's the one thing that I do like more about that environment versus what we've done here is that when it's the show on the 7 to 9, I might have 3 or 4 guests, and it becomes more of a dinner party. So it's kind of like what you just described when you and Tree got together. So I do let them interject. Like this last week, I had an amazing foursome. It was all 4 women. I know Tree's really been big on getting women in the media and women attention. So I had Yvonne Holly, who is actually Yvonne Holly Lewis, but she is running as a Democrat for lieutenant governor here in North Carolina, and a good friend of mine, Jan, he's actually referred her to me, and then we dialogued back and forth, and she came on. Sharon Hill, who's a motivational speaker, was on, and then I had Maureen Edwards, who is, I think she might have been on Free Show, but she's, or at least was one of the people that, like me and you, sometimes were just watching the stream and everything and making comments, but she's an educator out of New Jersey and is an author herself. And then the last one was Mona Shakes, and Mona Shakes is a friend of Lippy Roy's and is a stand-up comedian and does the things promoting comedy, particularly in non-traditional markets like the Asian Comedians, African American comedians, Latin comedians, and stuff of that nature. So she was on cracking all kinds of jokes. Actually, she started off the show, and then Yvonne Holly, the lieutenant governor, came on. Then Sharon came on, and I think Maureen was the last one. I might have had Sharon and Maureen in backwards order, trying to just remember off the top of my head. But it was just a great conversation. But there was a lot of dialogue and interaction between them. And sometimes that's even created businesses, because I know one of the shows I had a person who was involved in a social justice interest or movement. I can't remember what it was. But then I also had an animator. And I know it was. It was I don't think it was Sonny Slaughter, but it was somebody along those same lines of doing some activism work. And they met these artists that are doing work around activism, but they're doing it using their platforms, which is filmmaking and cartoon stuff. And they have since networked and everything. So that's a wonderful thing when that happens. So, but I appreciate you accommodating me with and I apologize for any fluctuation in my schedules. Life's been crazy lately, so everybody's moving and juggling and flip flopping, and I'm just going with the flow these days, So I think a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, but thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
No problem. I enjoyed having you on, and I'll definitely be reaching out to you. And of course, we will keep in touch on through Sri and through the other platforms. But look forward to talking to you more.
Anytime you want me to jump on about something, or you feel I fit in with something, please feel free. I love discussing just about anything.
Okay, sounds good. Just really quickly, you said you do know, and then I'm gonna leave it alone. You said you do know Jenny, and if so, do you have any stories of Jenny Warburg stories?
I don't, but I do remember she's a very good photographer. I do remember her name being in the Times all the time. I remember editing her photos. If you ask me to pick a single photo from her right now with everything that's going on, I wouldn't be able to go back that far. But gotcha. I did edit her photos when I was in the Times Wire service and remember seeing her name a lot. She was a very steady freelancer with the Times, and I remember seeing her credit a lot. So, I always tell all photojournalists, I may not remember every photo you've taken, but I do remember if you were a really good photographer, and she's a very solid photographer.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'll let her know, like I said, she's a family friend, and there's quite a few photographers that are connected to me because of my dad, and I also worked at the Arts Council many years ago. So most of my photographer friends are actually what people would consider artistic photographers. Like I've got a good friend, Titus Higgins, who was one of my former bosses at the Hayti. He was the program director, but he now does a lot of travel photography and photography around that kind of stuff. But he does it mostly in museums and art galleries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, I love photographing in museums. That's a whole nother discussion.
Oh, yeah.
All right, man.
Thank you.
All right, Mark. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Yeah, do the same. Be safe.
Okay.